He looked at his wife, at the mother of his 2 small children, and said he was leaving to find himself. And when she asked what to tell the kids, he didn't even flinch. Tell them I chose my freedom over them. In Phoenix, Arizona, there are neighborhoods where summer heat flattens everything, where the streets smell like dry earth, and where families live, pressed close together with the kind of nearness that only exists in places where everybody has known everybody for years. That was where Melissa Reed lived, in a rented 3-bedroom house with cream-colored walls and a mesquite tree in the yard that gave very little shade, though the children loved it as if it belonged to them. Melissa was 31 when Ethan left. She had stopped working 3 years earlier, when Mason was born, because the 2 of them had decided it was the better arrangement for her to stay with the children while he kept working at the construction materials distributor, where he had already spent 6 years. It was not a foolish plan. It was a normal one, the kind that works as long as both people remain in it. Ethan was not a bad man in the obvious sense, not the kind who sets out to wound people on purpose. He was the kind who walks away instead of facing things, the kind who disappears rather than solves, the kind who confuses personal discomfort with having chosen the wrong life. He had been distant for months, coming home late for months, keeping his phone face down on the table for months. Melissa had noticed. She had asked him about it. Ethan kept saying he was tired, that it was work, that it would pass. It did not pass. He left. The first days were the strangest, not even the hardest yet. Just strange in that way the body has of failing to understand what has already happened. Melissa kept doing what she always did. She made Sophie breakfast. She bathed Mason. She hung the clothes out in the yard under the 9 o'clock sun. She moved with the automatic precision of someone who keeps functioning, because functioning is the only thing that still makes sense. Her mother, Mrs. Hope, lived 40 minutes away by bus in a rural settlement north of the city. When Melissa called to tell her what had happened, Mrs. Hope was quiet for a moment, then said she was coming. She arrived that same afternoon, carrying a pot of broth, and without asking too many questions, which was the way she showed love. "And the money?" Mrs. Hope asked while filling the bowls. "I have enough for this month. Next month, I don't know. Ethan is going to send something." Melissa looked at Sophie, who was eating her soup without lifting her eyes. "I don't know yet. Ethan sent money twice in the first 3 months. Then he stopped." Melissa called him. He answered once. He told her he was looking for work in another city, and that as soon as he could, he would send more. He never sent more. After a while, the number no longer existed. Melissa had 15,000 pesos saved in a bank account. Ethan did not know existed. The kind of small savings many women put aside without telling anyone, not necessarily out of distrust, but out of instinct. That money bought her 2 months of room to breathe, 2 months to think. During those weeks, she thought hard. She thought about what she knew how to do. Before marriage, she had studied accounting for 2 years at the technical college. She had never finished, but she understood numbers, invoices, and the basic things small businesses need even when their owners do not want to deal with them. She held on to that thought. She spoke with a neighbor who owned a stationery store in the neighborhood and asked whether she needed help with her books. The neighbor admitted that she always kept everything by hand and never really understood how much she earned or spent. Melissa offered to organize everything for 500 pesos a month. The neighbor said yes. That was the beginning. Within a month, Melissa had 3 more clients: a hardware store, a beauty salon, and a carnitas stand that had spent years not knowing whether it was making money or losing it. Melissa worked at night, after the children had fallen asleep, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a cup of coffee that always went cold before she had time to drink it. She sorted invoices, prepared simple balances, and explained in ordinary language what the numbers were saying. Business owners started recommending her to one another. "That woman who helps with the books," they said. "She charges fairly, and she explains everything." By the end of the year, she had 8 clients and was making more than Ethan had made in his final months at the distributor. But numbers were not the only problem. Sophie had turned 5 and was in kindergarten. She was a quiet child who processed everything inwardly, the kind who does not ask much but hears far more than adults think. Ever since her father left, she had started clinging more closely to Melissa, following her through the house, appearing in the kitchen when Melissa worked late, and sitting silently beside her. One night, Melissa asked her why she was not asleep. "Are you going to leave too?" Sophie asked. Melissa stopped typing and turned to her daughter. "No, I'm never leaving. Why did Daddy leave?" Melissa thought of several answers. She thought of the ones that protect, the ones that explain, and the ones that simply postpone. She chose the most honest answer a 5-year-old could carry. Daddy was lost, Sophie. And people who are lost sometimes go looking for something without even knowing what it is. That has nothing to do with you or Mason. You two did nothing wrong. Sophie thought about that for a moment. Is he coming back? I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Sophie nodded with the seriousness children have when they accept things without dramatizing them, because they have not yet built all the layers adults collect and use to complicate everything. Then she went back to her room, and that night she did not come out again. Mason was different. He was 3 when his father left, and 4 when he began asking about him. He asked with a simple tone of small children, without emotional weight, the way a child asks why the sky is blue. Melissa answered with that same simplicity. Daddy doesn't live with us. He's somewhere else. We're okay here, the 3 of us. Mason accepted that and went back to playing. There were hard moments that had nothing to do with money. The day of the school fair, when all the fathers showed up, and Melissa went alone with both children and felt the looks from the other mothers. Looks that were not exactly cruel, but still heavy. The night Mason came down with a high fever, and Melissa stayed awake alone until 4 in the morning, holding the thermometer and keeping her phone beside her in case she had to call the doctor, with no one there to wake, no one there to tell her everything would be fine. On nights like that, Melissa learned something people do not learn anywhere else, that it is possible to be completely alone and completely whole at the same time, that fear and the ability to act despite fear are not opposites, that a woman can be shaking inside and still stand firm on the outside, and that children do not need their mother to be perfect, they need her to be there. Mrs. Hope came on weekends whenever she could. She brought food. She stayed with the children so Melissa could work, or simply sit for a moment in the yard without anybody asking her for anything. Those moments were short, but they were necessary, like water. By the 2nd year, Melissa had 15 clients. She had opened a bank account in her business name, Reed Accounting, with a simple logo a friend had made for her on a computer. She bought a new printer, upgraded her laptop, and took an online tax accounting course that cost her 2 months of savings, but opened the door to bigger clients, proper businesses that needed tax filings and compliance. She rented a small office in the neighborhood, 1 room with a window facing the street and enough space for a desk and 2 chairs. She put her name on the door in vinyl letters, spending an entire afternoon applying them while Sophie helped hold the ruler and Mason sat on the floor eating a cookie. When it was done, Sophie read the sign out loud. Reed Accounting, Melissa Reed. Then she looked at her mother. That's you, Mom? That's me, Melissa said. Sophie smiled, with that smile children have when they are proud, without fully understanding why, only that they feel it deep inside. The years passed, with the speed they always have when a person is busy building something. Sophie grew up with the practicality that daughters of working mothers often develop. She learned to make her own breakfast, fold her clothes, and watch her brother when Melissa had a meeting. It was not a responsibility Melissa had deliberately placed on her. It was something Sophie took on naturally, because she had grown up seeing that things do not do themselves, and she chose to become part of what made them happen. Mason was the one who loved through touch, the kind of boy who came running and wrapped himself around his mother's leg as if she were the most solid tree in the world. Melissa let him. She needed that as much as he did. One afternoon, when Sophie was 9, she came home from school with an assignment. She had to make a family tree and needed names and photos from both sides of the family. "Do I put Dad on it?" Sophie asked. Melissa thought for a moment. "If you want to, then put him there. He is part of your story even if he is not here. And if you do not want to, that's okay too. It's your tree." Sophie thought about it that night. The next day, she turned in the tree without Ethan's name. Not because she hated him, as she later explained with that direct logic children sometimes have, but because a tree is made of the people who are there, and he was not there. Melissa said nothing. She simply hugged her. 5 years after Ethan had left, Melissa received a call from an unknown number. It was him. His voice sounded different, calmer, carrying something like the weight of years. He said he was in Texas, that he had built a small company, and that things had gone well for him. He said he thought about the children a lot and asked if he could see them. Melissa listened, without interrupting. "Do you want me to ask them?" she said when he was done. Ethan hesitated. "Yes. If you think that's okay. This isn't about what I think. It's about what they want." She asked Sophie first. Sophie was 10 by then, and still had that same direct gaze. She listened to what Melissa explained, thought for a moment, and said, "It's okay if, for now, I don't want to." Melissa told her that was fine. Mason, who was 8, asked if he could think about it. Melissa said yes. In the end, neither of them wanted to see him, not at that time. Melissa told Ethan exactly that, without extra softness, and without cruelty either, just the truth. Ethan said he understood, that he respected it, and that if they ever changed their minds, she should let him know. Then he hung up. Melissa sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. She thought about the night Ethan had left with his suitcase. She thought about the 15,000 pesos she had stretched as far as they could go. She thought about the nights with a thermometer in her hand. She thought about the vinyl sign Sophie had read aloud. She thought about Mason hugging her leg. She felt no resentment. Resentment had taken up too much room for too long. And long ago she had decided she needed that space for other things. What she felt instead was something closer to clarity. The kind that comes when a person knows exactly where she is standing and exactly how far she had to walk to get there. The business kept growing. By year 6, she had 3 employees working with her, 2 young accountants fresh out of the technical college, and a receptionist who also managed the schedule. The office had moved twice, each time into a slightly larger space. She now had clients in 3 different neighborhoods and 2 mid-sized companies that had come through referrals from earlier clients. It was not a corporation. It was something better. It was hers. She knew it down to the last number. She had built it from a single sheet of paper on the kitchen table with cold coffee beside her. One October afternoon, when Sophie was 14 and Mason was 11, the 3 of them were in the kitchen after dinner. Sophie was doing homework. Mason was watching something on his phone. Melissa was reviewing documents for a client. Without planning it, Sophie looked up and asked, "Mom, do you ever miss having a partner?" Melissa considered the answer carefully and honestly. "Sometimes," she said. "There are nights when I do, but I don't miss what we had. I miss what it could have been if it had been different." "That's not the same thing." Sophie nodded. Mason never looked up from his phone, but Melissa knew he was listening, because that was how he was, the kind who processes everything in silence and keeps it inside. "Are you okay?" Melissa asked Sophie. "Yes," Sophie said. "I just wanted to know." Then Sophie shrugged in that way teenagers do when they understand more than they are willing to say. "Sometimes I worry that you sacrifice too much for us." Melissa looked at her for a moment. "Raising someone who worries about that isn't a sacrifice," she said. "It's the result." Sophie said nothing else. She went back to her homework, but there was something on her face Melissa recognized immediately. It was pride, the quiet, kind children feel when they finally understand something without needing it explained. Mason did look up then. He looked at his mother for a second and said, with total naturalness, "You're the best mom." Melissa smiled and went back to her documents. That night, After the children were asleep, Melissa stepped out into the yard. The mesquite tree was still there, larger now than when they had first moved in. Its branches stretched across much of the patio. Back then it had barely given any shade. Now it gave enough. She thought about the night Ethan left, about the woman who had stood in the living room with all the lights still on, and about everything that woman had not yet known she was capable of doing. Then she thought something she had not been able to fully name until that moment, that Ethan had not simply abandoned her. He had, without intending to, given her the only chance she might ever have had to discover exactly who she was when there was no one else left to lean on. That discovery had been worth everything it cost. Inside the house, soft music was playing from Sophie's room. From Mason's room came the silence of someone sleeping peacefully. Melissa remained under the mesquite tree a little longer, breathing in the Phoenix air that in October finally begins to carry a little coolness. Then she went back inside. She had work to review tomorrow. She had 2 children to feed breakfast in the morning. She had a life that belonged completely to her and needed her attention. And it was enough. It was more than enough. If this story touched your heart, give this video a like and share it with a mother who needs to remember today that she alone can still be everything her children need. And if you are not subscribed yet to our channel, subscribe now and turn on the bell so you do not miss the next story.